We were just talking about the feelings that occur when you, for whatever reason, right, where you have this feeling of anxiety or panic. And your first instinct, right, is to run away, right?
True.
And the way you've been running away is through eating.
That is true.
Okay, and if it's not eating, right, well, is there any other way that you've run away? Would you say for you, dieting or trying to lose weight has been a way for you to do that? Or has it always just been, I'm going to go get my food?
Dieting has been a way of running away, because then I get hooked into that, and again, not being there with that feeling.
So for the most part, your way to defend yourself from that feeling is eating food.
Yes.
So eating food removes it, it goes away, and it goes away until it comes back.
Yes, because it doesn't go away. It's there, and it just gets worse. It's like any kind of addiction.
Yeah, for sure. Well, of course it is, but it's not the food that is addictive.
No, it's my reaction, the way I was with it, or is with it, or
it's your running away.
Yeah.
It's the running away that's the addiction. It's not necessarily the means to the end of getting it. It's the end. You're looking to get away.
Yes.
Okay. So what happens? We were messaging yesterday, and you had said I really had a hard time, right?
Yes. It was what I. Okay.
No. Well, let me explain it this way. You don't even need to describe the trigger. The trigger really doesn't matter. What, don't you agree? It's ultimately there's that feeling again, and you're going to run away from it. And that's where the entitlement, right? The arguing, justifying, reasoning, rationalizing. Remember how you were like, there's this weird feeling of anger and being withheld from the food, and it ticks you off, and you're going to get it.
Yes.
Right? Because that feeling, you don't want it, and it's not a good feeling.
No.
So that ultimately that was the cycle you went through. And don't you agree that you've been living in that cycle for decades?
I have.
Okay. So, and I said to you, you're going to have to welcome that feeling in. I went right into you're afraid to die. You're like, yeah, you're right.
Yes, you did. Yes.
Are you surprised that I knew that?
No, I'm not, because of your own personal experience. You're telling me, and I thought, yeah, that's true.
I know. Have you ever connected with that before? That you actually, you are running from a true physical sense of death.
Yeah, no, I haven't.
Does that sound true though?
It sounds very true.
Yeah. How does it feel to actually be consciously aware that that's what that is?
Interesting. It's sort of like, okay. Cool. Well, gee, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but am I telling you something that's not true?
No, you're not. What it is a sense of awareness. It's like, oh my. Yeah, that's true. You know, when you feel that something is there, but you never realized you knew it until you hear it.
Yeah. Then it almost should feel like you can breathe a little deeper. Like, oh, that makes sense, and that feels that's right. There's some truth to this, and it becomes conscious.
Yes, instead of being part of the unconscious, like not even aware of it, it's awareness.
Yeah, it's contextualized. It becomes realized. And it's something that you've had most of your life, and it has definitely, would you not agree, ruled your life. It's literally been in a lifetime of running away. And how you run away has become so defining and caused so much suffering.
Yeah, it has.
And I think in that becoming aware, don't you agree, now you are in at least in a position to look at it.
True.
Okay. Some people would say, well, when those feelings come, you let them be there, and then it's like a wave and it will go away. Have you heard that before?
Yes, but you don't want them to go away. You want to immerse and embrace it. Part of it, have it, like you say, in you.
Yes. That's what I told you yesterday. I said, look, you're running, what you're doing is you're afraid to die. You feel like you're going to die and you need to defend yourself. You need to either there is the fight or the flight.
Yes.
Right? The way that you fight is with food. And I said the way that you flee would be dieting.
Yes.
And you're a fighter. And we have talked about this in your history. You've always been a fighter. You're the one that wants to put your dukes up and you want to beat the shit out of whatever's coming at you, right? And you're going to
Oh yeah.
Okay, and a way to fight is with your food. Fleeing would be I got to diet, because that's a way to avoid, right? Dieting is a way to hide yourself.
Yes.
Whereas eating is a way to prove that you have control, that I have control over this, right? So what would happen, and what I explained to you is I said what you're going to have to do is invite it in. You're going to have to let it be inside of you. And I said you're going to breathe it into your lungs. And you're going to let it be there, and you're going to look at it with your mind's eye. You're going to use your eyes, and you're going to look at it, and you're going to let it become you. And you said, oh, you had said it's like going for a walk with it. And I said, oh, no. That's what you've been doing. Right?
So how do you breathe it into
you? One way to think of it is you're going to let it kill you. You're going to let yourself die. It becomes you. It's like looking at something that you think is going to kill you, and you're going to let it kill you, and you're going to watch it happen and feel it happen. You're going to absorb it. You're going to look at it, and you're going to taste it, and you're going to make it a very, it's like, I want you to think of this as a scientist.
Okay.
How do you get to know the murderer?
How do you get to know the murderer? You're with them.
Yes. You need to be inside the body with it, because it's a visceral experience that you're having. You're having a very physical murder happen inside of the body. It feels like that.
Okay.
Right? So if you're going to you need to become the observer, not the defender. If you defend yourself, you are essentially responding to the brain neurochemistry, and you are perpetuating the feedback loops between the two. Okay? If you become the observer and you don't respond to it, how is the brain going to react?
Not respond.
Well, eventually it's going to dissipate, because it needs a feedback loop to perpetuate.
Yeah.
It needs some feedback. If you don't give it feedback, what happens?
If you don't, that situation goes away.
Yeah, it doesn't have anything to thrive off of. It's like you're starving it. But you have to allow it in. You have to become it. The other thing that happens as the observer is you have this frontal cortex that is super intelligent. Essentially what you're doing is saying, okay, the area of the brain is going to basically tell you you're going to die, and it's going to feel that way. You're going to have the heart palpitations. You're going to get hot and sweaty. You're going to have issues. And you're going to look at it, observe it, you're going to let it come in, and you're going to, from the frontal cortex, you're going to look at it and try to understand it. The only way for you to understand it is to look at it, to pierce at it, to breathe it in, to want to know every ounce of energy in it. Okay? So what do you think happens when you change the direction inside the brain from being the defender to the observer?
The reaction gets less that I would have towards it. In other words, like I think at first there'd be the need to want to be a high level of anxiety, because at first I want to do what I've always done, but then that sort of goes away because I'm just there in it. It's there in me.
Yeah, you're going to have there's severe panic, but you have to do this with the intention.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is saying, I'm going to let it kill me. I've been running from this for my entire life. You can continue to run, but you're going to continue to have what you have. At any point, did you ever consider that the only other way out of it is to let it be there? One of the things I find so fascinating too is this area of the brain that's manipulating this is so important. It is such an important part of the brain's survival mechanisms that it gives you a sense of permanence to it. For me, in my experience with it, it was as if I was going to live with this pain permanently. That's what it feels like. And that is coming from that survival area of the brain, that this is a permanent death. You have to save yourself from it. When you don't save yourself from it and you accept the permanence, you're basically saying, if it kills me, I'm okay with it. And I would rather live with this permanence than to live with the permanence of my defense mechanism.
Yeah.
Do you see that clearly?
Yeah, I'm seeing it. I'm just going, okay, wow.
Okay. This part of the process came to me before I committed suicide.
Wow.
It came after I decided. I'd already decided I was going to do it. Okay. You're not there. How could you come to this if you're not in the presence of I'm actually going to kill myself?
Yeah.
Right? So not many people get to this point. And usually if they do, they commit suicide. So you don't even know that they've gone through this, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I just took you there without you having to decide to commit suicide. How's it feel?
I'm dazzled.
You should feel amazing. You should feel like, oh, there is a way out.
Yeah, I feel dazzled.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa.
This is essential. This is if you look at it from afar, don't you agree? This is what you needed to do to start.
True. And I'm trying to sit there, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay, so how do I know when I'm sitting with it? And it's in me. Is it like that I get really anxious, so then I know it's in me?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you'll feel the need to defend yourself. Remember when you said there's all these excuses for why you want food. You're going to have to really slow that process down. What happened for me is I decided before I committed suicide, I felt that it would be important for me to really look at what I was running from, because that's ultimately why I was going to commit suicide. Because this pain, this panic, the suffering in my defensiveness was worthy of committing suicide. It was that heavy of a burden that I thought no life is worthy of living with this type of burden, which I believe is true. My personal opinion. Life is not worth that type of burden. And then I came to, well, then the burden is this, I'm running. The burden is there because I am trying to defend myself from, I'm going to die. I feel like I'm getting murdered. It is so severe and it's so intense in those moments that I have to defend myself. Will you stop it? Can you hear the dog?
Yes, I can.
I'm dog sitting, and this dog, I have a bearded dragon, and this dog thinks the bearded dragon is just really entertaining. Hey, Vespa! Anyways, back to what we were talking about. to me, I remember this moment of realization, like, okay, I'm running from the fear. I feel like I'm going to get murdered. And that's why I'm willing to kill myself. It's like the suffering of me defending myself from that murderer is worthy of suicide, which is ultimately the same thing as getting murdered. So why don't I just let it come in and see what happens? Because I got to know why this is happening. Why am I having this insane physical sensation? I know I'm not getting killed, but it is so real. It is so real. I feel like I'm gonna die. And I don't know why, right? And to me, it was like, I might as well sit through that, because it's going to feel the same way when I pull the trigger and kill myself. It's the same. So before I do this, why don't I sit through this to understand it? So for the first time, I will invite it in, and I'm going to look at it. I'm going to look at this monster. I'm going to look at the murderer. I'm going to feel it. I want to get to know it. I want to understand it, because ultimately that's the only way I can get past this without suicide. Either I live with this monster and it becomes me, because that's what it feels like, or I'm going to just end this whole misery with one pull of a trigger. And I will tell you this, I came out of the ashes a totally different state of being. And I became aware of a lot. And I believe that's in that sitting, and that's when I had my out-of-body experience. Was in that moment. And I'm not saying that's going to happen for you. I think it happened for me out of my own desperation and humility and this purity in my desire. And I think my brain somehow created an alternative means to survive within its own system. But in that came, for me, a lot of awareness.
Which is what you're teaching us.
Yes, thank you. So how do I know this? I don't teach this. There's no science at this point that can talk about this. But how am I so consciously aware of it, right? How is it? Well, it's because I don't know. I became conscious in that moment. Who knows? Who honestly knows? And it doesn't really matter.
No. Is that you became aware, and so that's part of your life's work as you're teaching us. I hear you.
Yeah, and I would say that in that, I remember too becoming like, having these moments where I could breathe, because it's very similar to when I said to you, oh, you're running from dying. And you went, oh my God, she's right. There's so much truth to that. You become aware of it. In that moment, it loses some of its power. I remember in that moment realizing that the fear of death for me comes when I feel like I'm getting fat. Okay. So for me, it was, for you, the fear of death comes when you feel like you don't have your food to defend yourself with. Okay. It's a very similar issue. We're just on the other side of the coin. I had one side of the coin. You were on the very flip side of that. So it's almost the same disorder, just manifesting on the right or the left side. Okay. I was on the right side. You were on the left side. It doesn't really matter. It's the same disorder. It's just the one side or the other. So for you, you're fighting. You fought that fear of pain. I ran from that fear of pain, or that fear of death. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So for me, my defense mechanism was to exercise it away. I'm running away, literally, right? To hide from that pain. If I kept my body thin, then the pain it's like I'm hiding from it, right? For you, that pain came and you fought it. You defended yourself that way, right? So what I became aware of is that my fear ultimately stems from feeling like if I have no worth, I have no life. So anytime I felt like my worth was being threatened, I felt like I was going to die. So it had literally hijacked, that belief hijacked my brain's fight or flight mechanism to where it actually manifested in terms of you're going to die if you get fat. And for you, it's I'm going to die if I can't eat to defend myself. It's the same mechanism. You're just using a fight and I used a flight. Okay? So what is going to need to happen for you is you're going to have to welcome it in, invite it in, breathe it in, let it be there. It's going to feel like it's going to be there permanently. And what you're going to have to be able to tell yourself is I'd rather this be here permanently than to continue to have to defend and fight permanently. Because the defending and fighting is so full of hardship and suffering. It's worse.
Yeah, because it's the issue, that it's the thing that causes me grief.
Correct. The defense mechanism. You are now to where how you defend yourself in fight is worse than the actual pain of death. Yeah. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay. So you're to a position where I'm going to let myself feel like I'm going to die. And if I die, so be it. I will never, I am quitting my defense mechanism. I am no longer going to fight. I'm a white flag. I'm going to admit that I failed and I'm going to let this thing kill me. And I want to get to know it. If it's going to be there forever, let's get to know it. Why is it there? What am I afraid of? What is it? Why? Because it's truly a matter of life and death at this point. Agreed?
Yes, it is.
So if you are going to remove the suffering of your fighting, your defense mechanism, you're left with what? Death. Why is it going to kill you? Why is it there? What that's doing, being the observer, is getting you, it's the intellectual part of the brain becomes very active. Do you have issues in that area of the brain?
Issues?
No, there's a reason why you're a PhD, honey.
Yeah.
You're extremely intelligent, but for some reason, when it comes to this, you don't want that part of the brain can't be activated. And so what do you think is going to happen when you have this murderer that comes in and going to kill you and you don't flee or fight? What's going to happen when your intellectual side of the brain looks at it?
It's going to have fun.
Oh, well, it's not necessarily fun, but it becomes,
You know what I mean?
it becomes aware.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
It becomes aware, and you're going to go, oh, well, this is why I'm doing this. Oh my gosh, that's why it's all going to start making sense to you. What happens when there's sense in those impulses? What happens to the impulse when there's sense in it?
They go away.
Well, you're more likely to understand the triggers, and you will have less of an emotional response to them.
Less of a compulsion.
Yes, because now you are consciously aware of why, and now you have the intellect, usable intellect, to not respond to it. Yeah. And tell me this, you haven't had this experience yet. However, what do you think happens the first time you sit through it without fighting or fleeing? What happens the next time?
It gets better. It doesn't seem as anxious.
It's far, yeah. Well, meaning it doesn't really have the same. You don't have the same response. Tell me how it would feel the second time. Is it just as awful and catastrophic the second time?
Less contained, less overwhelming, I would think.
Yeah, because you sat through it the first time. So the second time you kind of have an experience to draw from.
Yeah, the emotional muscle is more.
So you relax into it more. You're like, It's like you become a limp noodle, right? Yeah. And in general, because you're no longer defending this sense of death, the brain in terms of the trigger, does it respond the same way if there's no feedback loop to it?
No, that's what you're saying. It doesn't.
No, the brain is incredibly elastic. So even if we use like muscle physiology is much slower than brain physiology, brain elasticity. The brain is incredibly amazing. And what I know for me, it was, I had that feeling of death. By the time I was willing to commit suicide, I had that feeling 8 times a day, sometimes up to 12.
Wow.
I mean, could you see now why I would want to commit suicide? Because my defense mechanism had to be there all the time. I had to have all this armor. I had to micromanage everything. I had to hide everything. It was obsessive, right? It was insanely heavy and burdensome. So I was saying, you can imagine if it happened that often, how much my life literally, why I would be suffering to the point of wanting to commit suicide. Could you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So how do we position you to do this without having to be close to suicide, right?
Through a guide.
Well, yeah, I'm essentially guiding you. And does it make sense to you at this point? Do I need to tell you what you need to do?
Tell me what I need to do.
I think you already know.
Yeah. Yeah, but maybe not everybody that's going to be listening will know.
No, that they're not who matters to me right now. That's just you.
Yeah. Okay.
So who cares about, I mean, honestly, people are going to take from these what they're going to take. Most people don't take what they need because they don't want it yet. Right? So what do you think is going to have to happen the moment that death knocks on the door?
I have to welcome it in, is what you're saying. I have to welcome it in.
Yeah. And you're going to say, go ahead and kill me, but let's find out why. Can you tell me why? And you have to feel it. You have to feel it kill. You have to breathe it in. You have to look at it with your eyes open to understand it. Okay? A lot of people close their eyes and look away, and they don't really understand it. It's like they're just tolerating it until it goes away. It doesn't really work, because it always then comes back.
Yeah.
Because you're just literally tolerating it. I want you to open your eyes and look at it and invite it in and assume it's going to be there forever. For the rest of your life. If it's going to be there for the rest of your life, don't you agree? You might want to talk to it.
True.
Yeah. So what this means is that you have to commit to isolating yourself with it. Mm-hmm. That means you're not going to give yourself any way to escape. You know what that means, right?
I'm not going to be... Oh, what does it mean? I would say, like, the thing about... It's something to do with food.
Of course it is. What's your main defense mechanism?
To eat.
To fight with food.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what is it going to feel like to be offended, essentially, and to completely surrender to it and say, that's fine. I'm not even going to defend myself.
I'll be feeling defenseless.
Yeah. And that is that's where you're going to go. Yeah. A lot of people transfer their issues at this point. An drug addict will go to alcohol. An alcoholic's going to go to food or sex or cigarettes. Yeah. They can find a different way to defend themselves.
Yeah.
And the goal for you is to have the intention to go and invite it in and to not defend yourself with anything. So go, if you can, maybe lay down on the floor, completely immobilize yourself so there is no movement. So make it a literal defenselessness.
Okay.
Allow it to breathe. I mean, I really, honestly, when I say breathe it in, I mean it literally. Breathe it in. to your lungs, as if you want the feeling of the pain in your lungs. You want it inside of the body. You want it to be there, and you're inviting it to be there, and you're going to get to know it. Can you see why that would be important as far as like eliminating any escape route?
Yeah.
If that's your intention, it takes you're focusing on it. You're not trying to avoid it. The intention is to get to feel it, to know it from the inside, to allow it to be with you and to be around you and to take over. Because you're no longer trying to dominate it.
Yes.
You're going to let it dominate you, and you are not going to defend it.
Yeah, because I tried to dominate. I get you.
I know. Well, I know. I've kind of gotten to know this over the last few sessions. You are a fighter, and I have a feeling a lot of people hide or fight this route. Hiding again is the dieting. That's the anorexic side of this, right? The fighting is, I need this. This is my only weapon, right?
Yeah.
So you have to put your swords down.
Yeah.
And your armor. Yeah. And you're not going, and it's going to kill you. And you have to be okay with that and say, I'd rather that because my defensiveness is worse than this death. So I need to go into the death of this.
Yeah.
And to see what happens. Yeah. And to get to know it. So that's your assignment for this.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So any weapon, you are to remove it. Distracting yourself with the internet, distracting yourself with shopping, distracting yourself with anything. You are to completely isolate yourself with the feeling, with no way for you to escape. With the intention to breathe it in and to let it be there. For the first time in your life, you're going to let it actually be there. And get to know it.
Okay.
How do you feel about this?
Trying to figure out if I could do it, but I think I can. I know I can. I just gotta yeah. Well,
I would have to say this. For me, all it took was the integrity. I remember honestly thinking, I don't know if I can, even my spirit at this point, I felt so spiritually weak, very close to death.
Wow.
I think literally I was close to dying, even without the suicide. I felt so weak I felt so fragile that I thought this is, ultimately I'm going to die. I can't handle the weight of this. It's so intense. It's surely going to kill me, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to die anyway. So that's ultimately what carried me through it, is that I realized no matter what, I'm going to die anyways.
Wow.
I know. That doesn't, it's like you're there too, honey.
Yeah.
You are. At that time, I didn't have children. I was still very young. My frontal cortex hadn't been fully developed. I was 20 years old. So can you see how it get that bad? You're a functioning adult. You have children. You have a life. So it's not going to get that bad for you. Yeah. You're not going to let it. You're just surviving in it. You're walking with it. Remember when you're like, we need to walk? I'm like, no, you're walking with it. Trust me. So you have to want life free from defending yourself. That has to be a hope. You have to hope.
For that. And the other thing I was thinking about is, okay, I should, inviting it in also means not defending myself in other areas of my life, because I defend myself a lot. So just to invite it in and I think part of what the process will be is inviting it in whatever, in other words, not go to the defensive.
Mm-hmm.
In whatever area. It could be work, it could be interaction with the kid, could be whatever, just because Glenn says to me I'm pretty defensive, so I'm sitting here thinking, and then after, when I think about things, I get them, but my first reaction is being defensive. So I think the first thing to welcome it in is to slow it down and not be defensive. Like, just cut that out. Just work on not doing that. Just being with it, like you say. And I think that is like the first thing I see, right?
Mm-hmm. And observing observe the whole thing as the scientist. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're defending yourself, you are positioning. Yeah. There's a positionality there. And that's actually a form of identity. You've identified yourself as in this position, and it's not working for you. No, you're right. This is everything in your life. I mean, consider how much food has become important to you, and it's in all of those positions. Every time you're defensive, your need for food. That's your main sword. That's your main attack.
Yeah. So as much as I'm defensive, as I get as you say, is defensiveness is in all these different areas of my life, that sort of increases my desire to eat, because that, like you say, is my biggest sword.
Yes. And you can say that is the biggest sword throughout, no matter what.
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter what you're defending or having to prove. Food is your personal form of protection.
Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm.
I hear you.
And if that goes away, meaning it's not an option, what are you left with?
Me is fairy dust.
And that fairy dust, honestly, you have to believe, even if it's just a string, it's a fine string of life.
It's like
even if there is absolutely nothing, you have to believe that. Well, you don't have to believe anything. Just go into it open-minded and see what happens.
Yeah. Okay.
The way I thought of it was, I'm going to live with death forever. And that's better to me than living with my defense. And then actually dying for real, too. Yeah. So I accepted the permanence of it. And I think that was very important. Because I even if you, and that's why I stopped myself just a second ago, even if you hope that it doesn't work, that's still defending yourself. There's still some form of manipulation in that.
Yeah.
So you have to go into it assuming the worst.
Yeah.
And accepting the worst. It feels that way, it's responding that way, and that's what it's going to be like forever, and I'd rather that.
So you don't have the bing, bang, back, ping, pong.
Nothing.
Ping, pong.
You just take it and hold it, and it's there with you forever, and you say, okay, let's keep on moving. You're going to be with me forever. You're like I'm married to you. You are what I'm going to be with. Let's get to know each other. If I'm tired of running from you. You're going to be here forever if I keep on running. So I might as well just let you be here so that the running part of this, I'm free from it. That was me. For you, it's the fighting part of this. I don't want to ever do again. I don't want to fight anymore. I will never fight again. So let's just get to know each other.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. No, I hear you.
Okay. I'm going to stop recording.
Okay.
Are you curious at all in any way?
Yeah, I'm curious. It's going to be interesting. Like I said, the first way I'm thinking about approaching it or going to it is not being defensive, like cutting that out. So then I think that gets me closer to and gets me to welcoming it in, because I have to get
the next stage, what you're going to find first is that you're going to be pissed off about it. That stage is next. So you're going to be really angry about it. Almost like it's going to kind of feel punishing for you to not be able to fight. You're going to feel withheld and punished and pissed off about it. So expect that. The next step is for you to realize that why would I be feeling punished? I'm trying to, right? This is what needs to happen. So you go into acceptance. Once you go into acceptance, then there is a level of sadness that you feel you're willing to die now. That's where the next step is. I am willing to die. And in that willingness is your freedom.
Wow. Wow.
It's about time.
Yes.
Well,
I am 56 fucking years old. It's about fucking time.
I know, and I feel it. I feel it for you. I've done it. I've been there. You can do this. Just do it. Just allow yourself to experience it. Just allow the experience. Let's not have any expectations, okay? Thanks for letting me share all this.